All right, folks, welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I am your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. All right, if you like the videos, don't forget to like them and share them far and wide, and the public polling project as well. But of course, you cannot do that right now because if you might have noticed, and it looks like we will have things sorted out very soon, it appears to be, and not just that, everything on our company servers appear to be down, and it looks very suspiciously like a brute force attack, but we don't know that 100% yet. I will keep you posted. They're going to have it done and reset and up in a minute. You know, there's an intolerance in this country, folks, a growing intolerance that is very, very, very dangerous. A lot of sleepless nights over here during election season. A lot of sleepless nights. There are some pretty cool stuff going on. I didn't get a chance to play this on either Monday or Wednesday, and I want to play it now. Some of you may have seen me share it online, but maybe not. All right, on locals, you certainly have. I want to play this though because with the whole idea of like how close is this election, we have look, the polls just don't make sense, right? And when they don't make sense, most people want to say, well, that's just how close it is, right? What if this election isn't that close? Either way, either way. Of course, I would argue, and I don't know anyone who would seriously argue the opposite, that there's really only one potential outcome if the race is not close as polls suggest, both in the electoral college and in the popular vote. Again, not the polls that are in the crazy category, all right? The category showing unrealistic margins that are just never going to happen. The polls that are in what is, I don't know that you can call it a consensus because there's still so many that are in the crazy category, but it is shrinking. But nevertheless, even when one poll looks like they're not totally crazy and they come out with conflicting results between different states, and it just doesn't make any sense. You know, the confusing Emerson College poll that came out this week across the battleground states. I mean, basically, it's tied everywhere except for Trump leading in Georgia. I mean, guys, that smells very much like a cop out to me. All right. Um, the likelihood of that happening, considering the different demographics, not only among these states, but between these states and regions, it just makes it extremely unlikely for that to be the case. But in any event, um, when we're talking about this, like, you know, this concept, there really is only one potential way that this race ends up not being that close, because there's only one issue that we can pinpoint with polls that would cause us to have a miss, like such as this, and that really would be only one that in the end hurts Trump in the polls and benefits him at the ballot box. We shall see. Nothing is 100% certain, and past is not always prologue, but we're not having a difficult time reaching educated white voters. We're not having a difficult time reaching typical liberal non-whites. Like that, it's just not the core group that we're having trouble with. We're not having trouble reaching seniors. We're having trouble reaching certain kinds of seniors, right? And none of this would seem to benefit Kamala Harris. All right. Look, Kamala Harris wants another debate. Kamala Harris did another interview with Stephanie Ruhle. Clearly, the goal here is to try to run out the clock. That's the goal. All right. Try to run out the clock and try to squeak by here with platitudes, word salads, and a general hatred for Donald Trump. Will that be enough like it was in 2020? And when I say it was enough, it was barely enough. Barely. All right, and then we'll talk also this episode about what our plans are for the polling in the future, because I've been up all night taking care of all this stuff, and it's been kind of crazy. All right, first and foremost, we have to go over what we missed. All right, and before we do that, I'm going to play the clip I was just referring to. There also is something else that could potentially cause a polling miss, and that is efforts on the Republican side for the first time ever to legitimately get out voters that typically they wouldn't even try to get out because they wouldn't be for them. But for the first time in my lifetime, in your lifetime, they are. And those efforts are getting bigger, more robust, and getting attention from the people that you would expect and needed to. So let me roll this. You may have seen me on a couple of shows discussing this, but there's actually news on it. So let me roll this first, and then we'll talk about it. And then we'll get into Harris's stuff before we discuss the polls and the backdrop of all of this. New Suffolk polls out today. There's a bunch of stuff out. Morning Consult is a clown show. I've refused to even lend them credibility. We can talk about them. But if you are seriously if you're on the left and you think that that's like good for you and you want to use that for copium, I'm not going to entertain that shit. If you're on the right and you're like dooming, it's not my job to pat you on the top of the head and tell you it's going to be okay. All right. It's my job to tell you which one, what you should, how you should navigate this sea of misinformation. All right. So
but the people of this country are loving, good people who are being led by the worst people who've ever led a country. And that is just true. I think that's true. I mean it. My love of Americans and my loathing of their leaders deepens every day that we're on the road. It really, really does, because of the disconnect. So what can you do about it? Well, you can vote. I don't think I've ever encouraged anyone to vote ever, but I feel like in this state, it's particularly important. I'm not a political person. I'm not here on behalf of a candidate. Probably guess who I'm voting for. I actually am voting this year. I am. But I do think people should vote in the state of Michigan, because there's absolutely no reason you should be led by people who do not share the most basic values of the people of Michigan. And I mean I always beat up on the East Coast of Michigan. My wife is actually from the Detroit area. I know, boo, oh, I agree. I know. And whenever I talk about Michigan, I'm like, there are actually two sides to it, and the West Coast is way nicer. But the truth is there are super nice people over there too, and Northern Michigan is just like a wonder. It's incredible. And none of you deserve your leaders, none of you. I don't care, it's true, even the people who vote for them don't deserve them, if I can just say. You often hear we get the leaders we deserve. That's a total lie. No, you don't. No, you don't. And you see that around the world. I've been in plenty of countries with horrible leaders. Those people don't deserve them. Nobody deserves leaders like that. And so I did hear of something really cool today. I've never done anything like this, but I'm going to do it now. There's actually a website in the state of Michigan where you can find people who probably would vote for the candidate you're voting for, but don't vote. And you can look them up. The voter rolls are right there. It's called 10X Votes. And you can go on there and just contact people you know and be like, hey, by the way, we don't deserve this. These people are horrible. And we're not horrible. We're great. And if you're frustrated with these people, even if you don't think the system works, even think it's all fake, even think they're gonna steal it in the end, that's not exactly true. You can overwhelm their malintent by your voting. And at the very least, you can give them the largest middle finger ever wagged in the face of anybody by voting against them. I do think it's important. Yeah, that finger, the one you just waved. That's right.
All right, so much said there, but basically, if you're on locals, you know what 10x votes is. The difference between this and some of these other efforts is that it really is an entire methodology of how you get these voters to vote and how you approach them, talk to them, right? How they are brought into the system is based on research about the different behaviors of liberals versus conservatives, Republicans versus Democrats, right? Let's be a little bit honest for a second here. And at the risk of insulting some people, Democrats are fanatics. They're fanatics. They're ideologically more fanatical than conservatives are, who generally just want to go about their lives and go about their day, and they don't really want to be bothered. And they kind of do, and this is to their detriment. Hope that everything's just going to kind of be okay. They believe more so in God, a higher power, and they fill these things. They fill their, like, whatever you want to call it, these holes in their soul with these things, with these belief systems. And they're deeply, deeply distrustful of people they don't know. They're skeptical of people they don't know. They're skeptical of power, etc. And they are certainly skeptical that the system is fair and that the system can be impacted for a positive change. All right. That is not the case with liberals. They generally don't believe anything higher or greater than themselves, so they search for meaning. When you cold knock, for instance, a liberal's house, unless you're a Republican, you're much more likely to be able to engage with that voter, and they are much more likely to open up their feelings to you and their thoughts and personal beliefs, again, such as how they intend to vote, whether they intend to vote at all. So, I guess Tucker somehow through the people that are doing this got wind of it, and since he made this buzz, he was talking about how important Michigan is, and of course it is. If Donald Trump wins Michigan, it's over. The election is over. But you probably would know that already because he would have already won or on his way to win Pennsylvania. Okay, so that being said, they're both very, very, very important states. And the attention that this got now has given them an ability to move this, it appears, into Pennsylvania. Okay. Why does any of this matter? These people that are targeted in this or identified in this database to be targeted to get out the vote, pollsters will screen them out. They have little to no vote history. When the New York Times calls them and asks them, are they definitely almost certain to vote, etc. Right. Even if they say they are, self-reported certainty to vote or likelihood to vote is very unreliable, and most pollsters will either outright remove them from the sample or they will look for vote history to corroborate that certainty. And if they do not have it, generally speaking, they will remove them. You can see the first-time voter shrinks considerably in, for instance, the New York Times poll, considerably from the registered voter to the likely voter. That is what is going on there. The likely voter model it could be different things for different pollsters, but it's a series ultimately of assumptions that the pollster is making about who is believable and who will actually vote. This happened in 2016, and there was a slew of people that did not vote in 2020. Trump was crushing Hillary Clinton with this group. They weren't all new, young voters who were new to the system. Not at all. All right. And I know about this group because I identified them. I did. Okay. So I know that population, if they are to be believed, they are an immensely, immensely how could I put this? It's a group that's an immensely positive group for Donald Trump specifically, less so Republicans, but certainly Republicans more so than Democrats. This is a very Trumpy group of people. And if the polls miss these people, it's a wrap. Wrap. I know the stats so far as to the engagement on the site and what how could I put this? What kind of numbers we can realistically expect will be brought into the electorate because of this effort. None of this speaks to the efforts you see that are very much first time efforts by organizations like Turning Point USA, right? Who then partnered with Scott Pressler, who then uh, has had more coordination with the RNC than they have ever had before. Both groups, by the way, right? You have somebody like Michael Watley, whose job as the co-director, whatever you want to call it, the co-chair of the Republican National Committee. This is something he did and focused on quite a bit in North Carolina, and he did it to he had a lot of good success with it. All right. And putting it all together, it's very easy to look at the margins Joe Biden had in 2020, or even the margins that Donald Trump had in 2016, for that matter. And you could clearly see how the interest in this thing and the effectiveness of this thing could be the difference in if it was a close election. Of course, there's another potential scenario, which is that all happens, but it's not really as close as people think it is anyway, and then it just turns out not to be close at all. And then there's, of course, the other scenario, to be fair here. The other scenario is these people don't return their absentee ballot. It ends up being much more difficult than everyone thought, and because Democrats are having a problem too. And it's a high turnout electorate, more akin to a midterm, and that is bad for Republicans in recent years. Sure, could happen. Could happen. Has it happened in the era of Donald Trump? Absolutely not. In both cases, Trump drove turnout higher, and by the way, more than anticipated by most. All right. So I wanted to bring that up because we need that all as a backdrop. We need it all. And of course, you could go and check out 10x votes. All right. But um, all this being said, the Harris campaign isn't stupid. They know this. Democrats are keenly aware, like James Carville had a meltdown because some of Harris's staffers, or I would say people who work for the campaign, are unjustifiably confident. Or maybe it's even more accurate to say dismissive of certain concerns that people like James Carville think are valid concerns. People, by the way, like Rui Teixeira, who have the same view and have been talking about it. We have talked about it on the show, which is this: Kamala Harris is not going to do as good as Joe Biden. She will not perform as well as Joe Biden in key areas of the Rust Belt specifically. And in this, look, the state of the race is such. Only a few shitty polls have Kamala Harris ahead in the Sun Belt, in any of the Sun Belt states. What are you going to do? Point me to a morning console poll? Give me a break. Arizona's out today, USA Today, which was favorable to Harris in Pennsylvania. Trump +6. Why does all this matter? Because there are two areas of the country where polling misses have been quite prevalent. And there are reasons for it. The demographics that we talk about day in and day out. One is the Rust Belt, and one is certain states in the Sun Belt. Certain. Florida was one that everyone was always so concerned about. So when they missed in Florida, we took notice. People took notice. But it's not just Florida anymore, is it? North Carolina has not been polled correctly in over 10 years. Yes, some people did a very good job with the Ted Budd race in 2022. And yes, private data showed that Republicans would sweep both of those state Supreme Court seats. Public data really did not. It looked much closer than it ended up being. Hell, there's a poll out today in Minnesota. That pollster had Sherry Beasley winning North Carolina for the U.S. Senate by 2 points. So again, I mean, we've been through this so many times in recent years. I'm like always so surprised when people are taking polls as gospel at face value because you really can't. I wish I could say something different. It's my industry, but you can't. And with knowing all of this, her and her private data, it's certainly looking more like Trump's data. All right, it does. And then a certain group of pollsters who have done a better job in recent years that are releasing public information. That data, that universe of data, generally mirrors each other. All right. They look very similar, which is to say that Kamala Harris is a major problem in the state of Pennsylvania. Kamala Harris is down in, if not all but Nevada in the Sun Belt to varying degrees. All right. So the big polling errors have gone Rust Belt to Sun Belt, meaning the polling errors have been worse and more pronounced in the Rust Belt than they have been in the Sun Belt, even though both regions of the country have had problems. And it really probably shouldn't surprise you because of the people who are leaving the industrial Midwest, the Great Lakes states, right? The Rust Belt in general. They're leaving these areas for warmer and greener pastures in the Sun Belt. So if they were difficult to reach when they were in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Iowa, right? If they in Minnesota, if they were difficult to reach there, why would you think they would be any less difficult to reach when they move to Phoenix, Arizona, or when they move to Savannah, Georgia, or when they move to anywhere in Florida? You get my drift. Or, by the way, Eastern North Carolina, which was grossly underrepresented by the census. So, by the way, North Carolina pollsters, anyone who starts with a census weight is going to blow the election. Period. Gonna happen. There are more people in that part of the state than the census counted for. So if you're using that, decade survey, you're screwed. You're screwed. All right. Let's with all of this, like I said, Harris wouldn't be out there taking these risks, wouldn't be out there calling for a debate. I'm going to play a couple of clips and then we're going to read because we're going to talk about the states that I do think are really, really important. And then obviously we'll discuss the plans for the public polling project because they are based on those beliefs. And I don't even think they're beliefs, honestly, folks. I think that most people generally would agree with me on where this race will be decided and by whom. Okay. All right. So listen. Oh my God. With all of the media garbage within the last 2 months, propping Kamala Harris up and buoying her favorable image because of a media fiction. We tend to forget that Kamala Harris was deeply, deeply disliked and viewed as a total clown. She was more disliked than Dick Cheney. She was more disliked than Dan Quayle. These were people that were either mocked, incessantly because they were stupid, or straight up called a war criminal who should be tried and hanged by the Hague. Right now, she's happy to have Dick Cheney's endorsement, as she told us during the debate. But that's funny because our party wanted to execute Dick Cheney just a few years ago over the illegal war in Iraq that he played a part in getting everybody in and the fake yellow cake. That never happened. All right. So she's out there and taking risks because if we rewind the clock just a little bit and remember everything I just said, then it's not difficult to understand why she keeps doing what she's doing, which is failing miserably at public appearances. Maybe I should just play the clips first and then we'll discuss it. But here, before she sat down with Stephanie Ruhle, Kamala Harris gave what was supposed to be this economic speech that was going to answer all of the concerns that we all heard from focus groups and from surveys, specifically within undecided voters after the debate. She was going to fix it all by doing this speech, blowing people away, and then doing her interview with Stephanie Ruhle. It didn't work out because Kamala Harris is an awful interview. She conducts an awful interview. Kamala Harris is not really a great public speaker. She can read what's in front of her and put on a performance, but she stretches to find words when she goes off, right, script, and she strains to find words when she is asked questions she really doesn't know exactly how to answer because she is not Hillary Clinton. She's certainly not Barack Obama. These were competent, smart people, whether you like them or not. You cannot take that away from them. They were. Now, Obama was lazy. He was a lazy son of a bitch. He did not like doing the role of president. Clinton was lazy because he got up late, but he still did the damn job. He spoke to the Congress all the time. Barack Obama did not. He sent Joe Biden to Congress. He hated dealing with them. But he still wasn't stupid. Listen, folks, Kamala Harris is a friggin' moron. I'm sorry. This isn't punditry or, opinion analysis. She's not a smart person. It's, in fact, one of the most dangerous things to have somebody like this. I'm sorry. The administrative state loves it because, they got the senile old guy for 4 years that the country was lied to about being senile. They got him to sign every executive order they wanted him to sign. They got him to do make every move within the executive branch that they can make he could make to have benefited them. And then she's going to be just a more self-aware version of that because she really doesn't understand what the hell she's talking about. All right. And when she falls off script and gets nervous, she doesn't have it. You know what it is? She doesn't have it. So she doesn't know what to do, and she just sounds like a friggin' moron. Here's clip 1.
We need to guard that spirit. We have to guard that spirit. Let it always inspire us. Let it always be the source of our optimism, which is that spirit that is so uniquely American. And let that then inspire us by helping us to be inspired to solve the problems that so many face, including our small business owners.
So let's be inspired to solve the problems that inspire us and inspire us more to inspire us, and inspire us. What the hell did she say? She is a master at saying absolutely nothing. If she loses, and I mean, I think if this keeps up, she will. If she loses, she will go down as the loser candidate who perfected the word salad that means absolutely nothing. She says a whole lot of stuff that have no meaning and just doesn't make any sense. And then afterwards, the media tries to do their spin. You got David Axelrod out there saying, "What a wonderful speech. Oh my God." They're not stupid. She's a moron and gave a fool speech, made a fool of herself because she cannot do this stuff. Folks, did we forget she ran for president before? The only question is whether or not the media can create this fiction around Kamala Harris, dupe enough people to believe it, and then hold them off from understanding it's all bullshit for long enough until the ballots are handed in. That's the game. That's the play here. And it can work. But it doesn't mean she's smart. Doesn't mean she's competent. Doesn't mean she's an effective leader or an effective manager, because of course she's been none of that. After what now? Almost 2 weeks of polling data and focus group data telling us all the same thing, that she is not being specific enough, and to park the platitudes, clean up the word salad, man, take it off the table, and just tell us why you're going to be better than Joe Biden. Tell us exactly what you intend to do. And again, many of these people are people who don't like Donald Trump. They want her to do that, yet she is clearly incapable. She sits down with a super friendly face, Stephanie Rule. These are like besties. And she tosses her every softball imaginable. And she blows one answer after the other. When she gets in trouble, she default pivots to, and Donald Trump. But Donald Trump. It's exactly what these voters don't want to hear. I'm telling you, it's exactly what her campaign is telling her not to do, but she can't help it. She cannot help it. That's one theory. The other theory is they've given up on the middle altogether, and they don't give a shit about those people who are still undecided. They want them to stay home. They're dogging Trump enough that they are trying to make those people that they cannot earn their vote. They're trying to make those people say, you know what, I'm just going to sit this one out. I cannot bring myself to vote for either one of these candidates. And then gin up turnout like Barack Obama did in 2012 against Mitt Romney, who failed to get out more than 3 million working class whites in the Rust Belt in the northern Midwest. All right, let's take yeah, before we give the reaction to the interview, which is just worse than the interview. Here's a piece of the interview. If you thought she said inspire an unusual and uncomfortable amount of times within a certain time frame, wait until you see this.
Assistance to state and local governments around transit dollars, and looking holistically at the connection between that and housing, and looking holistically at the incentives we in the federal government can create for local and state governments to actually engage in planning in a holistic manner that includes prioritizing affordable housing.
Wow. Of course, she said absolutely nothing there. She used the word holistic because she has real problems laying out these specifics that are being demanded to her. And in truth, most voters that, they're not like waiting for those specifics and saying, aha, now that specifically I like. They just want to know that you legit actually have a plan. A copy and paste job from the Biden website, which literally still includes the tags for Biden CSS style sheet rules, right? What the website looks like. IDs and classes still from the Biden website. That's not a policy. All right? That is not a policy. And I'm not saying you got to like put out these academic policy papers. What I am saying, however, is that people want to know you at least have one and that you know how to implement it. Hold on. Oh, thank God for sustain. I always had dry eyes, but ever since my surgery, it's been real dry. And on a day like this, when I haven't slept that much, my God, they do. But in any event, they're not looking for, the Brookings Institute version of what do you do with tariffs? Her tariff answer was awful. She was asked a layup question by Rule about tariffs, the use of tariffs, and she went on and on in this weird, Trump isn't looking at this sophistically enough, sophistically enough, and I would take a much more sophisticated approach, and because it's a complicated economy, and I would take a more complicated approach. It's again word salad that just means absolutely nothing. But it was a layup, and she's incapable of simply answering the question. She can't do it without pivoting and, oh, but what about Trump? At least Hillary Clinton could sit down, give an intelligent, competent response to an a journalist employee. I was going to call them. What's the difference, right? At least she could sit down with them and give them a straight, competent answer. If Kamala Harris was to win, she would have to, you would think, surround herself with people who are more capable of doing this than her. She's awful in interviews, folks. She can't even put on the disguise, the media myth disguise. She can't even do it for 25 minutes. That interview was 25 minutes. Yet, here's this so-called journalist going on Morning Joe to talk about the interview, which there's weird moments during it when she's, your opponent's talking about whether you worked at McDonald's or not. I mean, folks, she didn't work at McDonald's. Let's cut the shit. Your opponent's talking about this. Let's fact check. Did you or didn't you not work for McDonald's? That's not a fact check. That's asking the candidate to repeat their prior claim without providing any evidence that the claim is in fact true. A fact check would be if you could find a single person who remembers working at McDonald's with Kamala Harris. You won't find them because they don't exist. But a fact check would be like, I spoke to Tony Smith, and Tony Smith remembers that in 1976, Kamala Harris flipped burgers or dunked fries to me at McDonald's. Are you telling me, as somebody who has taken every job he possibly could get, working class roots over here? I mean, it'll be a little bit bougie now, but class never leaves you, or at least it shouldn't, and I wholly believe that. Why as somebody who has taken every job, I find it very difficult to believe, and I can't believe that there are not more people saying this. I find it very difficult to believe that they cannot find anybody who remembers. There's nobody out there who remembers a strange name like Kamala Harris. She's obviously still going to look like she looked, only she's older now, but a pretty woman. You don't, guys, you don't remember the cute girl who got a job with you when you were like 16 or 17 or 18, whatever. You don't remember that? If they ran for president 10 years later, 15, 20, 30, 40, whatever, if they ran for president all these years later, you would not say, hey, I know that person. Of course you would. Of course you would. You remember the prostitute, the high-end prostitute that took out the would-be governor of New York? He wanted to be president. I knew her. I knew her from New Jersey. She was friends with my friend's girlfriend, and they lived in Wall Township. As soon as I saw her on the screen, I immediately was like, oh my God, it's Ashley. Oh my God. Yet there's nobody who can present proof or testimony that they worked with Kamala Harris at McDonald's. And she says, we got to fact check it. That's not a fact check. But that was what the interview was all back the whole time. And then she goes on the rounds, CNN, Morning Joe, et cetera, although the CNN interview did not go that well. And she just carries more water for Kamala.
Yeah, it was great because I was watching Fox News and I'm now excited about Melania's memoir. I'm going to have to pick that up this weekend, and I can get a silver coin that Donald Trump launched on Monday. Obviously, one of the 100 grand watches. And
such an objective person, isn't she? What an objective journalist, right?
I haven't gotten my sneakers yet, but I'm sure they can tell me where to get them. No, that's nonsense. Obviously, for anybody who watched the interview I did with Vice President Harris, we sat down for 25 minutes and we talked about one single topic, the economy.
25 minutes? Oh my God. The horror. You expected her to work that long. How dare you? Maybe, just maybe, it's like the CBS interview or the CNN interview. Perhaps, right? With Dana or Donna, what the hell ever. Meaning, it's a lot more than 25 minutes. That's all we got to see about it. Of it. And then we start to hear about it. Well, wait, I'll get back. Wait, just wait.
It is the number one issue for voters. If Donald Trump would like to sit down and have that same conversation, I'm ready for you.
Why on earth would he do that? I'm ready for you. Contrasted to, I was delighted to have this conversation with Kamala Harris. Trump, I'm ready for you. Why the hell would he entertain this? Why? But again, 25 minutes. CNN said you can see X number of minutes. Where's the rest of the roll? My point is, if those were the good takes, the ones the media wanted people to see, how bad was Harris in the rest of the interview? We could immediately see the faces again in this interview, especially in the beginning of the interview, or what we're led to believe is the beginning of the interview. All right, but I digress. Let's wrap this up.
And I think it's hugely important, and it's a vulnerability for both candidates, but it's really tricky, Joe, because, you obviously want to cover all of these topics, but to just do it with one candidate, it's hard because many people feel like she's speaking in platitudes. She's speaking about an economic vision.
No, not her. Whoops. Not her, not Kamala.
In details. She's got an 80-page detailed policy proposal. And do I think that she answers every single question and gives people exactly what they want? She doesn't. Do you know why? Because she's a politician. And none of them do. They all speak in platitudes. But Donald Trump has given absolutely nothing except mass deportations, which would be a huge issue for our economy. And he just says, I delivered you the best economy ever, and I'm going to put across, blanket tariffs. But the thing that I think she needs to answer for more is, despite all of the economic wins over the last 4 years, despite the fact that Donald Trump emotionally connected with that blue-collar worker, but he didn't deliver for that blue-collar worker, she needs to solve for why he still polls better on economic issues with voters, because that, to me, is mind-boggling. When you talk...
That, to me, is mind-boggling. Okay. Perhaps because outside of your insulated world, which is damn near recession-proof, the rest of America doesn't have the luxury to live in a fantasy land like you. And in their world, wages went a lot further than they do now at the grocery store. In their world, they could feel the impact of the number of manufacturing jobs being the highest since the boom of the 90s in the Clinton era. They knew why indexes like the National Association of Home Builders would come back at, just skyrocketing record, builder sentiment, like, the manufacturing indexes, by the way, same deal. They knew it. They understood it. So they view Trump to be a good steward of the economy. That, and of course, that he is a businessman. He understands business. And many of people in this country believe that the country should be run more like a business, or at least the way business finds leaders, more competent people, because Tucker is right. We really are ruled and governed by the dumbest people that the ruling class has to offer us. These aren't super smart people. I wish I could say otherwise, but I can't. These are not super smart people. By the way, it does appear like I don't have time to go through and see what his conclusion was, but very clearly they fixed it. Looks like everything's back up. The archives for People's Pundit Daily, which is just People's Pundit Daily, of course, and you can go and check out all of the historical data that we have. But that is also working, as well as Big Data Poll itself, which is where the Public Polling Project is funded and shared. All right, it's all up. I will check out his kind of analysis of what the hell happened later when we get off the show. All right. And by the way, when we get off the show, I'm gonna do like a speed run through of some of the questions that we have today. All right. Well, all with good reason, folks. All with good reason. All right, let's wrap up Stephanie Rule's asinine comments, and then there's something I want to read.
Talk to voters across the board. They often say, I don't know what any politicians do for me, but I did get my taxes lowered. And she made it clear, when the individual tax cuts expire next year, the one group of people who will get their taxes raised are people who make over $400,000 a year. Now, a lot of people in blue cities.
Lies. By the way, you want to tighten up New York and New Jersey? It's probably a good way to do it. When these tax cuts sunset, and if you still, for instance, aren't granted the SALT deduction, I mean, you're going to be murdered regardless by the tax increase, no matter where you are, in all likelihood. At least most people who are watching this show. But these so-called rich couples and family households that are going to have to pay for this are in fact not that rich. Okay. It just sounds like a lot of money, but it's not when you come into the conclusion. Geez, how much is a grocery store bill these days? Just one, not the monthly shopping. mean, nobody does that anymore, not in this economy. How much is the every 3 to 5 day weekly, stop at the grocery store costing you? Right? All right, let me wrap this up and because I can't believe how fast time goes.
In blue states are wondering what happens to that state and local tax deduction. Right. Donald Trump has now said, we're going to lift that cap. He's the one who put it on. We don't yet know what she's going to do.
Obviously, the cap was put on for a reason. It had to offset other stuff. I'm not going to get into it all. If you really want to learn about the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, you can go to peoplespunditdaily.com, type in TCJA. All right. Yeah. Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Boy, I'll be honest with you guys. I'm rather terrified at the prospect of those provisions sunsetting. I was never able to hire someone that was like a favor, kind of like a favor, get him some experience, beef up his resume a little bit. Never would have been able to add him to the roles in addition to everyone and everything else we have going on over here if the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was not passed. Despite what you're going to hear, the same nonsense from the New York Times, they'll probably create another fictional couple that will somehow be positively impacted by her plan. Right? There is no couple. There is no plan. This will hurt a lot of people. And just to give you one stat, because it is important, because you hear, oh, he gave a tax cut to his billionaire friends. Wall Street overwhelmingly supported Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton, not Donald Trump. Wall Street betrays Donald Trump, views Donald Trump as a class betrayer. And the arguments, I've heard, about this being a tax cuts for the rich is like, their textbook playbook, but it is just so demonstrably false. It's incredible we continue to hear this, but we do out of Democrats, not just her, out of Democrats, period, in general. We're not going to blow up the debt and deficit over, tax cuts for your wealthy friends. All of his wealthy friends that were once his friends anyway are supporting Kamala Harris. I don't know what the hell they're talking about. All right. I'm not, man, I am not looking forward to if and when those things sunset. I'm just not. Kid'll have to be booted permanently.
Yeah, it was great because I was watching Fox News and I'm now excited about Melania's memoir. I'm going to have to
Okay, well, whatever. It resets, so we'll just go ahead and leave it there because there's something I want to read you anyway, and I think it's we're running out of time here. All right, she made a complete fool of herself. If you thought Dana was bad, this really took the chair. This really, took the cake, folks. All right, whatever the damn expression is. And yeah, whatever, you can call it a right-leaning site, a right-wing site, anything that didn't wholly subscribe to the Russia collusion hoax, which was in fact a hoax and a completely made up, fabricated, situation. Because of that. Right? Well, yeah, I guess, hold on. I'm going to give too much away. Let me just read it. Otherwise, I'm going to wind up being redundant. MSNBC's Stephanie Rule is the perfect picture of a corporate media propagandist. This is by Jordan Boyd. But anyway, it's the same thing how could I put it? It's the same thing with polls. All of these things you hear, the language you hear. I mean, it's really just censorship disguised as trying to give people or tell people what is and what is not credible. What is a credible source of information? Oh, the Federalist? Oh, that's just a right-wing paper. Okay. Well, all of the so-called mainstream media outlets all pushed a fake hoax that was really worse. It's worse than that. It wasn't just a hoax. It was a major part of what was a seditious plot to undermine the duly elected president of the United States and remove him from office. Yeah, I mean. Anyway. All right, so here's a picture. Let me read it. Rule disgraced herself when she failed to press Harris on key issues and later defended her non-answers. Do they have they don't. Okay. That was worth looking. Jordan Boyd writes quite a bit for the Federalist. I mean, does it really matter? Not to like beat a dead horse here. Does it really matter whether or not you think someone's coming at news or anything from a right or left wing perspective? All that should matter is whether or not the information they're giving you is accurate. Where am I, missing something here? All right. Vice President Kamala Harris wasn't the only one who embarrassed herself on live television Wednesday night during her first one-on-one network interview since joining the 2024 race for the White House. That's true. Of course, she dragged along Tim, her campaign running mate, with her. All right. The interviewer, MSNBC's Stephanie Rule, also beclowned herself when she not only failed to press Harris on key issues, but also waved off the Democratic presidential nominee's refusal to give a clear and direct answer as normal and acceptable. The bar for Rule to do her job was already low, in addition to working for one of the most well-known Democrat propaganda outlets in corporate media complex. Rule has publicly and unapologetically offered Harris a cascade of compliments and excuses, while simultaneously calling her political challenger, former President Donald Trump, a threat to democracy. In fact, it was only after she gave a glowing endorsement of Harris's hide-in-the-basement strategy on Bill Maher's show over the weekend that MSNBC announced Rule would host the VP softball Q&A appearance. So, what the hell do you think happened there? During the sit-down, which should have never been awarded to Rule, thanks to her propensity for Harris propaganda, the pair laughed their way through Harris's lies. Quote, "You have laid out a policy in great detail," unquote. Rule fawned during the nearly 25-minute conversation. Rule took Harris' talking points, like when she accused Trump of being, quote, "not very serious about how he thinks about some of these issues," unquote, as gospel, proudly regurgitating them as the secret between, as she segued between questions. "His plan is not serious when you lay it out like that." Rule agreed. Wow. That's the role of an interviewer? Like, or one that is pretending to be a journalist. It'd be different if I interviewed Kamala Harris or I interviewed Donald Trump. I'm not pretending to be a journalist. I'm not. It's funny because, all these people ever seemed to want was credibility. Now they don't seem to really care at all about it. Or at least not with everybody. Or not even how people perceive them, but what is true. Are you a credible journalist? All right. Right. So basically, she goes into the McDonald's thing, which we talked about. Again, that's not a fact check. If Kamala Harris claims to have worked for McDonald's, the opponent says, "I call bullshit." Her simply repeating the claim is not a fact check. I don't know why I let it amaze me after all these years. Anyway, she goes through that. Rule likely thought that asking Harris one semi-decent question about the border invasion, a topic that ranks among majority of U.S. voters' top concerns heading into the election, would give her credibility. Instead, it only showed viewers how many times Rule squandered her opportunity to ask Harris about hard-hitting questions. A nothing burger is like, "Can we trust you?" I mean, wow. And I actually have that clip. I mean, it's right here, though. If I wanted to, I could play it on the website. It's right there. The face. "Can we trust you?" And the face afterwards. So weird. Matter of fact, let's watch it.
Can we trust you? Yes. Yes. I am not perfect, but I will tell you, I'm always going to put the needs of the people first. Madam Vice President, thank you for your time today. Thank you.
Weird faces again. These faces. And that squeak in the beginning. Can we trust you? Of course. Weird. So odd. There's no doubt that Rule's treatment of Harris before and during their discussion paved the way for MSNBC to praise Harris for her, quote, working class street cred. Oh my God. Holy moly. Her ability to, quote, needle Trump subtly, unquote. Her attempt to blame Trump for the dire economic conditions created by the Biden administration and Democrats. And her penchant for feeding paranoia that, quote, women have reason to fear a Trump presidency, a second Trump presidency. I had a clip on this that I wanted to show after this, after reading that line, but ultimately I didn't. But what she basically elaborates on is much what you heard about, like, really pretty much what you heard in that last clip, which is that, they shouldn't be concerned about these issues. They shouldn't be, or at least they shouldn't, not that. They shouldn't be concerned about her giving these detailed issues. I mean, these detailed responses is actually the way, what I'm trying to say. All right. And she goes on and just turns it on Trump every time. And that's just not good enough. I mean, it's amazing because I know their campaign got the same, or drew the same conclusion after the debate that we did. They don't want to hear that. They do, in fact, want to hear more. I'm not trying to sit up here and give her free advice, but what she did during this interview is exactly what an advisor would tell her not to do after, having time to go through the fallout, the data that came in the wake of the fallout of the debate. She just needs to meet the presidential bar, or needed to meet the presidential bar. I'm not sure you get a second chance for first impressions. But even if you did, she better hope nobody watched this interview, because it was just more of the same. Oh, can you trust me? You should really be asking yourselves, can you trust Donald Trump? That's not the question. All right. Here's what's a little tricky. She doesn't. Oh, I have that. Right. We played that clip when she said she doesn't have the question around if the GOP is controlling the Senate and she can't raise corporate taxes. Where is she going to get the money from to expand the child tax credit and do all the things she wants to do? Rule said. Also noted that Harris says, quote, we just have to do it, unquote, without offering a tangible plan on section, but couched her criticism by calling the Harris campaign promise great. It's a little bit weird of a written sentence, but you get it. This is what happened when she went on, what's her name? Jeez, somebody give me her name. And she brings this up. And the mood changes instantly on the show. Just watch.
Talk about that answer. I do, but here's what's a little tricky. She doesn't answer the question around if the GOP is controlling the Senate, if she can't raise corporate taxes, where is she going to get the money from, to expand the child tax credit and do all the things she wants to do. And she says, we just have to do it. And that's great. And that's a campaign promise. But the issue is, if it means we're just going to borrow again, then what we're doing is we're just never addressing the deficit. And back in the days when you were a proud Republican, debts and deficits mattered.
All right, they still should matter. I mean, I think very clearly they still should matter. But I do understand the kind of the point on that. There are people who don't really obsess too much over that anymore. Small group means the world to them because they don't really view it as just like a fiscal government, are they being fiscally responsible with my money or whatever? No, they view it as like what is probably going to lead to the worst economic calamity in our nation's history. A debt bomb, bigger than anyone ever. Imagine the time it would take to correct that. All right. I'm not sure it can be. Well, it can be. It's called from scratch, starting from scratch. All right. Damn, man, it's 102 already. Look, let me just do this real quick so we can get back to it. Our speaking of which, debt bombs. It's our friends at Freedom Gold, of course. Look, if you ever wanted to diversify or just interested in precious metals, gold and silver, and looking for different ways to perhaps protect some or hedge against some of your other portfolio, then Freedom Gold is definitely the place that you guys should reach out to. Ask them any question you want because I got to tell you, they really are so good at answering and being thorough with all of your questions and concerns because they want you to be confident enough to make a decision and be happy with that decision. All right. Short and story here. We had them on earlier this week. It was amazing to see another two people win the prize raffle. But for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, if you start with Freedom Gold, which by the way, the minimum requirement for you guys has been lowered to just 500 bucks, which is incredible. But yeah, I mean, there's the People's Pundit deal that he announced the winners for, which is reducing, of course, the minimum entry, but then you get thrown into a prize pool. Not only will you already get a great deal on some of the best purity and quality silver and gold in the market, but if somebody's going to win, somebody's going to win some free silver. And by the way, we talked a great deal about how silver doesn't get as much love as gold. And silver is the one that excites a lot of people behind the scenes. But in any event, you could also just go to their website, maybe kick around, see what else you might qualify for. freedomgoldusa.com/rich. freedomgoldusa.com/rich. Or you can give them a call, which is number just for us, but couldn't hurt to tell them that we sent you over there. 888-279-3592. Even with the minimum requirement reduced, even with the prize pool, even all the things they've thrown into this, you're still going to get free shipping and insurance on your purchase. All right. So give them a call, freedomgoldusa.com/rich or 888-279-3592. All right. Back to this, what else is there to say? In all honesty, what else is there to say, guys? Is there really, I mean, right? We all know the interview. We saw what happened. I guess the only real question is whether or not this running out the clock strategy will work. As it, whatever you want to say, in 2020 clearly did. All right, I want to just kind of mix this because I know that we do have to start kicking this stuff around. I got to tell you what the plan is, what we're going to do. If all goes well, we could start Pennsylvania as early as this weekend. We will just have to see how it goes. All right. Hopefully it does. New national polling as well. And then there may be something that's separate from the polling project, but I don't want to bring that up now. I don't know if that's a done deal or not. But that would have an impact on what we do in the final stretch because there's no good reason to be redundant. There's no good reason to waste the crowdfunding resources, which is certainly not infinite. The crowdfunding resources on a project that's not going to offer as much value as one that maybe isn't being polled fairly, competently, whatever you may think. All right. But let me just kind of mix this up. And DeWong has a great point here. And he says, could we, meaning the Republican Party, refocus the narrative of illegal immigration as class warfare? A lot of bleeding heart liberals are misled to believe they are doing good by supporting illegal immigration. But the reality is they're useful idiots for the wealthy elite donor class who own industries that can pay for illegals for close to nothing at the detriment of the working class. And many of them are black and brown Americans who live in big cities. Yeah, I think you got to admit that was like the part of his magic in 2016, wasn't it? Like, the hell with this map. I don't like this map. I'm going to change it. Right? What could have happened if some of And it does look like he's making, like, I think it's fair to label them positive changes, but, and I don't wanna be a doomer here. I don't wanna be a doomer, so I'll keep that to myself, but I think you guys know what I'm gonna say. The class warfare thing is huge. It is, but understand it does come with greater heat because then you're like inflaming their class betrayal feathers or their class betrayer feathers, right? But it should be. I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, that's it. It should be absolutely. And I'm not saying that they don't do it now, that they don't really classify it as a class issue now or speak of it in terms of class warfare. Um, it's just not on the level it was in 16. I really don't believe it. I really don't believe it. And it was almost non-existent in 20, right? So it's an unbelievable amount of bad advice that man got. You want to change? I have probably 5 videos of minorities discussing why they're supporting Trump. Um, Laura and I were talking, and we were saying, regardless of whether or not we think this poll's overstating this or understating that, I think we can all be relatively certain that we're remembering correctly. Okay, we were in Seoul. We're not able to remember here, right? Once upon a time, it was like that, and these young, especially with the younger people in urban areas, that would most certainly be the root. Let me just put it that way. Let me just put it that way. What about the Greta stuff? What is it? What are you guys doing? The Greta. Oh my God, what is that? That climate activist nutcase? Is that what you guys are doing? Memeing in the chat. Is that what you're doing, chat? In the chat, memeing about Greta Thornburg or whatever it is. I don't even know her name fully, or at least how to say it. Amidst all the narrative shift, is it fair to say that this election is entirely about whether the working class comes out or not? If they come out, Trump wins. If they stay home, he goes to jail. It is overly simplistic to reduce everything to this. Simple is usually better when you're telling a story, correct? Isn't it? Right. And I don't think that's incorrect. I don't know how, because it's more than just, the working class we normally see in the electorate. He has the potential to bring out a lot more than that. And then if he does, yeah, it's curtains. Curtains. Especially, even if she was to somehow pull off a miracle and beat the polls in California and beat the polls in New York and beat the polls in the battleground states, all right? And of course, New York would be a heavy lift. I mean, getting closer to what people are used to. Yeah, I do think simple is better, but they don't view it. I guess you could leave the rest up to their imagination. You keep it simple. I'm trying to shorten my answer because I know we got a bunch of super chats too, but I think the more you can leave up to their imagination, the better. But I don't know. I don't know. It's a good question. It is a good. I think you're right, and I would agree with you on. Look, if this group doesn't come out, Trump loses. He goes to jail. I just don't think it ends there. I guess that's what I'm struggling with, Dan. I don't think it ends there, Dan. I think that he loses. His supporters are going to jail. Like it's going to be bad. You have to understand too. This is a woman who threw David Daleiden in jail for simply using his, well, what they are, no different right than they claim in the media. Him using his right as a journalist in a journalist capacity to get very, very unflattering things on camera from Planned Parenthood leaders and employees talking about the sales of baby body parts. Instead of being outraged against this illegal monstrosity, she went after him. So I think it's just a little simple to say, hey, couldn't we just do, it should be more. You know what I mean, Dan? People should think more about the consequences of it. Yeah, it's not working. I don't know why, but it's not working. Usually it does. My voice is going already. It's unbelievable. I was trying to make it a good hour and a half before this happened to me again. I'm having this issue. Usually that tea works. A specific kind of tea, it's not working. Yeah, it is. I do find it to be rather sad. That was a good question, Dan. I just feel like we, I'm one who always says that people are busy. Doesn't mean they're stupid. I feel like they can handle all of that. I guess is what I'm trying to say, and more instead of the simplified, dumbed down version of it. I guess I'm not talking about some detailed conversation in an ad on TV. You know what I mean? Man himself could do it better than the ad can, if they ever see it, of course, right? Question for the Q&A. Amid the narrative shifts, is fair. Oh, no, that's right. I already did that. Okay. Can you share your thoughts on the North Carolina statewide races and your predictions? I think Hal Weatherman is going to run away with it, as will Dan Bishop. Farley is a good dude. He'll ride the coattails there. Robinson, however, there is no such thing as reverse coattails. Okay. How badly Mark Robinson may run in North Carolina against the Democrat is not going to impact the presidential race here. I'm just not. It's funny because up until this new one in the modern era, nobody would have entertained that. Nobody. All right. All right. If Barnes's prediction of a Trump +7 win in North Carolina is accurate, I'd expect a clean sweep. Thanks. I gotta tell you, I think, yeah, it's tough. I don't know if I'd say that. I mean, yeah, I don't know that I would totally agree with that. I think that Mark Robinson has some real problems here, and I'm not saying it's fair. That's life, you know. But uh, yeah, I just maybe it would have to be more. Then again, Cunningham, right? Cooper, even when he was running against Forrest, right? He had such enormous leads in the Marist poll, and it ended up being about a 4-point race, about 6 points off from Trump. So I guess theoretically, but this is a scandal. Like he didn't have any scandals, so you might expect Trump to have to run a little bit stronger to bring him over the finish line. If it's that bad for him. I have a lot of people basically telling me that it's a nothing burger to them and they don't care. And I'm tempted to believe that because I do know the polling was already bad for Robinson. So I don't know if that made, certain things made it worse. But yeah, again, I would point out, man, look at what this says about them. They believed they were winning already. They decided to basically politically murk a guy. Definitely the state Republican Party, I'm saying. Well, I don't want to accuse anybody of anything, but all right. Again, I would expect Trump probably needing a bigger margin than in a typical cycle, typical year to pull the governor across the finish line or the lieutenant governor. I'm sorry, across the finish line. I really do. This time, almost one day, I'm going to stick my foot in my mouth. Let me tell you, more and more finding myself having to pull back something I want to say. And I know you guys are all good with it, but you know what? You know how this goes, right? I'm trying to understand the question here. I think I know what you mean. Is it possible movement toward Trump in some left-leaning polls and not others is due in part to some of them reading the early vote tea leaves? Um, hmm, that's a good question. That's a good question. But if I understand you correctly, right? Because you're saying they would basically be changing something in the methodology based on their assumption of what the early vote says, right? Yeah, I imagine that. Okay, it's tough. I don't know. I don't know what to make of Emerald. I've been on her show several times. You guys know that. I'm very friendly with her, but then again, how well do you ever know someone? I don't know. Curious to get your take on Emerald Robinson's assertions that Scott Pressler and the GOP early vote efforts are a psyop to distract from voter fraud. I think it's total opposite, frankly. Right? You ever think that? This is just money? You don't have a question? Come on. Oh, that's cool, on point. And by the way, I know I need to get back to it's obviously been very, very crazy, but I gotta check out the Carter family reaction to you. I love watching Carter family. I remember Laura and I found the Carter family before like they really had any of these subscribers on social media. I mean, it was pretty fairly new. It was cool. Yeah, I mean here we go. Zaidun Sarsam. Hey, Rich, I wanted to ask why are Dems investing heavily in the Pennsylvania Senate race if polls show it's a blowout? Also, why are they spending in Florida and Texas? Look, it could be that they just want to make Republicans expend money defending some of these seats, but in truth, Republicans are still kind of being reactionary here with stuff like this. Uh, you know, you don't spend the money. I mean, I guess you could. No, you don't spend the money on races that you're so far ahead of, right? You don't come sweeping in with outside group money and inside group money, right? You don't come rushing in with that to save Bob Casey because Bob Casey's name is still so much of a political legend that he's crushing Dave McCormick. Just don't buy it. This we'll find out, but won't buy it. Always, Zaidun, I would just say this. Always pay attention to what they do, not what they say. What they do. All right. How excited should we, and by that I think you mean, Trump voters, early voters, be about the Virginia early vote data? Cautiously optimistic. It is still Virginia nonetheless, but it does show a little, basically what we have suspected, which is that certain things about new voters. All right. And also, the advantage is narrowed considerably. Right. Okay. Sorry. I cautiously optimistic. That's the short answer. Samuel, are we seeing an uptick in deregistration in traditionally red counties and swing states? Like Clark. Oh, make sure that is spelled when you copy and paste that. Right. Okay. Are we seeing an uptick in deregistration in traditionally red counties and swing states, i.e., Clark County, Ohio, where Springfield, where these 10 to 20 million non-registered citizenry are blue states, taking most of them. The non-citizen issue is grossly overblown. Grossly overblown. Which is why I kind of find it funny if what you're telling me about Emerald Robinson's recent reporting is true, which it does sound like it is from David, by the way. Because I think actually she's reporting on a lot of stuff that is just completely not helpful right now. No one's going to do anything about it. So, why would you spend your time? It's just tiny little minute part of the population. when you have so many other voter targets that are, I don't want to say legit. All people are legit, but legal. How about that? Legal. Another LEG word. All right. Are blue states taking most of them? No. I mean, no. I don't think. Maybe I don't know the total answer to that, but I could look it up. But I'm gonna go ahead and say no. They're not, because I know extremely right wing areas, or now they're Trumplican areas, where it does look like they lost their damn mind a little bit. Like I mean, 10 to 20. Where are these numbers coming from? Where are these 10 to 20 million I mean, the media's been using, I don't mean to harp on this, but just bear with me for a second. The media's been using this 10 to 13 million number for illegals for years. We all know it's probably closer to like 30, honestly. But I'm wondering where this stuff is coming from Emerald, that there's that many being registered to vote, because it's not there. That's not supported at all. I mean, both sides have the data, and both sides would see this if that was the case. It's just not there. So I do look religiously at that stuff. You should spend and focus your attention, time, and energy more, if you're on the right, at getting out these people that, and I opened up the show with this, talking about 10x votes, because that is how you win elections, not, griping about a handful of illegals who may be on the voter rolls, or it's just not a huge deal. Like, it's the numbers aren't that big. So, but it's a good question about where they're going. I'm not sure there's an answer. I'm not sure Congress has that answer, despite trying to get it. I'm not sure they do. All right. All right. I think that's just, man. Oh, no, here we go. We're seeing the New York Times and Emerson poll more in line with you and Rasmussen. Have they fixed their methodology, or are they still undercounting white working class voters? We shall see. We shall see. That's a good question. I can't wait to get some new numbers ourselves and see where we're coming out with. I think the New York Times too is trying to get some people who were underrepresented, undercounted in 2020, again, especially with Trump on the ballot. And that's why they take interviews now with people who did not complete the entire interview. All right. Because they drop at higher rates, much higher rates. Trumpers, they drop at much higher rates. Even if you don't know they're Trumpers yet, because they dropped before you even got to that question. They demographically look like them. All right, so it's a good question. I guess ultimately we shall find out in November whether or not that is the case. It's a good question. Why do you tell someone dooming that the Dems will register infinite votes in the swing states? What do you tell someone dooming that the Dems will register infinite votes in the swing states? Okay, that's a great question. That they don't have a correct understanding of how elections work in this country and in particular states. I'm sorry, they just don't. They cannot register an infinite amount. We know roughly, who is and who is not. Well, I'm not putting this exactly how I want to. It is not an infinite pool. It's not. It's a finite pool. Does it change year to year? Of course. Cycle to cycle, of course. And that's kind of like the role of the pollster to figure that out. But this is a misconception that they can just, infinitely or stuff the box with, an infinite number. Wow, there it is. Wow, this is going to be a bad one. With an infinite number of votes. And that is just not the case. By the way, I meant to say this. Anyone in the path of the storm, be careful. We're about to get it again. Yeah, be careful. All right, that's all really, really good questions. It is 127 already. Wow, that stinks. I guess I'm not going to get to that. Okay. This is what it is. To make sure I didn't miss anybody. Peppers. Where did Atlas Intel come from? Been watching polls for 20 years. Never heard of it until last month. Now they're everywhere, and the most accurate scoop plays. Atlas has been around for several cycles now. They're not super, super old in U.S. markets, but they have done a phenomenal job. And in truth, pains me to say it, they were 0.2 of a percentage point more accurate than Big Data Poll in 2020, as far as the national popular vote. I don't know that much about their state polls, so I know that they had been or were going to. Maybe they did already, and it was private, done for a private client. But that they were going to do some battleground states here. They had Trump up, and they had him up. Out. Let's do the right thing, which they never do. They had him up just outside of the sampling era, but Atlas has done a very good job. They do international stuff as well, not just US based. All right. That's a good question though. Yeah, they're totally legit. There's no doubt about it. Welcome the new member, Mark. All right. Oh my goodness. No, I did not. You got to be kidding me. All right, I'll come back to that one, okay? Hey, Rich, on a scale from 1 to blatantly obvious, how much do you think the reason the feds are going after Eric Adams has to do with them raising the issue with the border? I'm sure we all know the answer. I'm sure we all do, crew. I'm going to go with blatantly obvious. Laura and I were just talking about this. Yeah, we're just really talking about this. Yesterday during the day, we were lunch, whatever it was. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was 2 days. No, it was. It was yesterday. Anyone who jumps out of line, especially on that issue, breaks with them on that issue, it's gonna have a problem. Look at what's his name from Texas's 5th congressional district. Barely. Hold on. Barely. What do you think he's gonna do? Yeah. So I mean, right. It's good. All right. Just can't do it anymore. It's just killing me. All right, locals. Stay tuned. I'll drop the questionnaire in the chat. State polls are not going to get any questions that are related to national events, by the way, just to let you know. So, for instance, how likely do you think it is that some agency in the U.S. government played a role in the attempted assassination of Donald Trump? How much? A great deal, if they say, of course. And then that's it. Done. Dunsky. I think that the state polls should be clean and they shouldn't be injected with anything else. All right. Especially in this environment. Does John Deaton have any chance against Elizabeth Warren? He's no Brown. He's no Brown. No, I really don't. No. And I also don't think that Larry Hogan is going to trounce his Democratic opponent by 16 points. I think that's utterly insane. I don't even think he'll carry it at all. I'm sorry, I just don't. Too many votes in Baltimore. All right, with that in mind, I really do have to go and shut up for a little bit before I completely lose this. But like I said, keep an eye on locals for the questionnaire, which we'll go over. We'll lean everything, of course. We can, in the national poll at least, can do like a kind of generic Senate poll too, a generic Senate ballot, I guess you could say. See if they're running nationally equally as far behind. I've seen other polls that suggest they are, but I would like to do it myself. You know how it is. All right. Yeah. But other than that, I'm gonna rest my throat and take it easy. Book club. Until we get another book, there is no book club. All right. So we have to figure out what we're gonna do here because I don't like sitting idle by and missing out on the Sundays. I did get a couple of two messages about their ability to continue to meet on Sundays, or at least some Sundays, many of them, like including some that are coming up. We'll see. I mean, we'll see. Especially during the election, may be very difficult to move this to a weeknight. Would be great. Would be great. But so far, minus those two, I still think that Sunday's everyone else's best bet. But we need something to read. Period. And I'm working on it. All right. All right. With that in mind, I'm going to leave you all and bid you all a farewell. Adieu, adieu, a day, right? Don't forget, if you like the videos, to like them, share them far and wide. The link is in the description for the public polling project. Also, share it far and wide. Contribute what you can, right? If you're on Rumble, it'd be great if you would just head on over to Locals and subscribe over there. peoplespundit.locals.com. peoplespundit.locals.com. You can even use the promo code that's in YouTube Community if you're coming from YouTube to get back the month that you had initially spent on PayPal. PayPal on YouTube if you want to move over to Locals. All right. All right. That's about it. I think that's just about all. And we'll see you guys in a little bit. All right. All the best. Have a safe holiday. I'm going to try to do so myself. Maybe even get some rest after I get done cutting another list. And I will, we're almost there. It will happen before you know it. It'll be here before you know it. It's already September 27th. It's almost over. This thing's almost done. And it will be very interesting to see how fast Trump closes. That Suffolk poll in Arizona is not at all good news for her. We can go back and we can look and see what Arizona was in 2020. Oh my God. Bad news. All right, guys. I will see you later. Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers. I will tell Lori also what's up. And be good. And remember, deuces. Deuces, 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 deuces. Uh-oh. Looks like I read the explanation. What happened to the site? It's a good way to do it if you don't want anyone to know how you did it. Right? Right. Alright. Nothing but love for you, folks.